Hey, it's Mirna from Happiness Academy. Welcome to the Happiness Academy podcast, a place where you can discover practical, simple, yet effective tools from the science of positive psychology. You're at the right place if you're looking to live a life of well-being and joy, staying resilient when facing any challenges, and incorporating a sense of meaning in things you do. Ready? Let's dive in. Hey, today's episode is dedicated to the winter blues. That horrible yet very normal thing that happens to many of us in the winter under the influence of cold, short, dark days, that our mood goes a little bit down. And maybe our emotions go a little bit down, maybe our energy goes a little bit down, and basically we just get in a little bit more quiet and sometimes not as enjoyable mental and emotional state as we have it maybe during the hot and playful summer or blossoming spring. And it's quite normal thing that happens, and it's also something that we might consider to adapt to in terms of paying a bit more attention to seasons around us. One of the future podcasts will definitely be about this awesome topic, about living more with the seasons and noticing more how can we adapt our energy also to nature around us. However, we also don't want to totally go and hibernate the whole winter and skip everything that's happening throughout the winter. And that is why today we are talking about some practical, tangible tips and tricks that can help you deal with the winter blues and pick up a little bit your energy and your mood. I do want to say, before going into practical tips, one tip that can also be very helpful if you're living in Europe or Northern America is considering to keep taking vitamin D supplements throughout the winter. That is not an area of my expertise, but a practical tip that helped me, so you can check out if that's something that might be good for you as well, depends where you're living. And the second tip is also to be a little bit gentle and accepting that it's okay to have a little bit lower energy and kind of this state of a bit more reflective, hibernating appeal of a blanket in the winter. And that is not a tragedy. We don't have to fix that or manage that. But if we choose that we want to build up a little bit from that space, here are some practical tools. I'll share 5, and they're not really tools, they're more like ways and approaches that we can deal with winter blues. And each of them under that category actually has many different tools and tips and approaches. So I'll be kind of mentioning some briefly, but you can also discover many more. It's more about asking which approach do I want to take, which kind of group of things do I want to try out. But anyway, let's get straight into the action. The first tip or way or group of tips is to move more and to kind of venture outside more. So move and venture outside. And I know that for many of us, it's natural to do a lot of sports and do a lot of movement in our everyday life, and that usually makes us feel good. So sometimes it's even kind of obvious and unnecessary to say, hey, move more and go outside, because maybe you're thinking, oh, but in winter when there is a sunny day, of course I want to go outside right away. However, what is interesting is that exactly when our energy gets a bit lower and when our mood gets a bit lower, that's when it's also, we have less motivation to move and to step outside and to actually do things. And that's it. It's a little bit, it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle that, the more kind of tired and a bit down I feel, the more I pull back and I move less and I do less sports and I do less exercise and I'm less disciplined to get outside if the weather is not perfect. And that kind of one feeds into the other, and it keeps on pulling me more into that cocoon and into that hiding place. So I would say here, especially if you feel a little bit tired and if you don't feel like moving and exercising and going outside, that is exactly the moment to question that and to push yourself just a little bit and say, hey, I'm not really feeling it today, but let me move a little bit more. Let me exercise a bit. Let me get outside. Now, the key important element here is exercise and actually raising our pulse a bit and, just moving our body a little bit more. That is the most important thing. However, if we can combine that with exposure to the air and a little bit of sunlight outside, that works that much better. So I would say seek for both, but then if both is not available, stick with the exercise and with the sport part of things. That is the most basic one, but probably most impactful one as well. So if you're overthinking this, you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do, oh, this is not really great for me, start with this one. Ignore all the other tips, don't think about everything else. Put in regular, daily, at least half an hour type of a thing, movement where you actually warm up your body, raise your pulse, raise your breathing, and really kind of put into that active physical mode. Ready for number 2? Number 2 is to be a bit more intentional when to go rest and recharge and when to move. And I'm just adding this one because first one sounds like, oh yeah, you always have to move, you have to get out there, you have to push yourself, you have to, be disciplined and so on. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying creating a habit of movement and being a bit proactive to move more even when we don't feel like can be insanely beneficial for our mental health and well-being, especially in winter. But it also doesn't mean if we're super tired and we feel like we need more rest, that we should always be forcing the movement. Instead, I would invite you to be very intentional about keeping the balance between the two. And if your body is really inviting for rest and you feel like you're lacking more sleep and you feel like it's a physical thing, take that rest. It's normal physically to slow down a bit in the winter. But at the same time, if that tiredness becomes a bit of laziness and just like, oh, I'm just, not in the mood because the weather is a bit cold today, and try to recognize that. Try to recognize that thin balance. And it's a balance that's tricky to recognize because sometimes we are tired mentally, or we are tired emotionally, or we are tired on any other level, and we mistaken it for our body being tired. And our body is actually maybe stressed and overflowing with stressed energy that we need to release. And if we miss to move, we'll miss to release that energy. So I think one of the most important things to recognize and keep on doing better is, when am I just feeling a bit sleepy and lazy because it's dark outside and it's that kind of weather? And when am I actually tired and it's time to go to sleep? And if you're not sure, you can totally differentiate between the two. A great way of working with it is to experiment a bit, because sometimes only after doing something active or after resting do we recognize that that was what we needed. So if you experiment with it a little bit and try out which of the two strategies works better, by doing it, you will know better in the next days where are you actually in this period of your life. So I would suggest, if you come, home from work, or you finish some activities in the day and you feel like this, oh, I'm so tired, but I also feel like I haven't been moving the whole day. So what should I do? It's the worst thing you can do is to choose the middle way and then kind of half chill, but not totally, and not do not do really anything, but then, kind of just melt into the end of the day. Instead, what can be really helpful is to intentionally split. I'll move a little bit. I'm tired, so I won't push myself to run a marathon tonight, but instead I will go for a brisk 20 minutes of half an hour walk, because even if I'm physically tired, that's not so difficult to do. Or maybe, I'll do some exercise for, 5-10 minutes, but harsh. And then after that, I'll take time to really rest and disconnect. So if you're not sure which one you really need, don't just settle by default in the kind of middle way, but consciously combine the two, where you push yourself a little bit first, but for a short time and not necessarily too rough. And then you unwind and disconnect and give yourself that proper rest and recharge. That will help you, that little push will also help you to discharge any stress energy, and then to have ability to actually properly disconnect. And it will be much more effective than just kind of drifting into having a semi-lazy evening, but also not recharging deeply. Okay, moving away from that physical aspect and movement and everything, we're stepping into tip number 3. And tip number 3 is to pay attention to consciously build more positive emotions. In other words, build small, tiny moments of many positive emotions. And that is actually really easy because you can just start by thinking, what are the things that give me positive emotion? What are the little things that I like doing? I don't know, sitting on my sofa with a cup of a dark cocoa or a tea, or maybe writing a couple of minutes journaling about my dreams and wishes, or maybe journaling about gratitude for things in this day, or maybe reading a good book, or maybe, I don't know, tending to my plants, or maybe creating something small and creative. So there's so many things that we can be doing that give us positive emotions that are actually very small and easy. So the point here, it's not to be like, oh, I feel a little bit down, so now I have to really push and make myself crazy, happy and excited about everything instead. No, you feel what you feel, but there is no reason to not to sprinkle that with the small bits of something that give us sense of content, sense of gratitude, sense of appreciation, maybe love, maybe pride, thinking a bit about our achievements or something we did well, maybe moment of curiosity in learning something or creativity. And the point here is not to set a huge goal of doing something huge that will make me feel amazing, but instead in incorporating in our day, especially in gloomy winter day, these tiny things and tiny steps and tiny ideas that we can do more of. So I would invite you to think right away, what are some little things you could still add to your day, even if you have moments like that already, that would boost a little bit your positive emotions. Is there an action you can do? Is there a moment you can take for yourself? And how does that look like? Is there someone you want to reconnect with? Is there some place you want to visit, or what is it for you? So don't be shy to pause here for a second and think a little bit. Hey, what is it that I want to add to this day? The goal is never everything, but the goal is always one more thing than I usually do. And I'll also link to this podcast description to blog post on Happiness Academy blog, in which also I talk about some tips and tricks how to build more positive emotions if you feel like this has been a bit of a struggle in winter. Now, we are moving on to the last two, and they're kind of short and easy, okay? The fourth tip is all about reconnecting with others. And it ties into the positive emotions as well. And it's this idea that when we feel down and when it's dark and when it's this more winterish vibes show up, we do get an urge to pull in and to step back and to disconnect from others. And the more down we feel, the more this instinct kicks in to move away from everyone. And actually, it can be really, really helpful in a moment when we feel like pulling away to intentionally reach out and reconnect with someone with whom we know they're good for our energy, for our mood, and for our general well-being. So that's also an invitation when you feel the impulse, oh, I just want to go under the blanket, to ask, hey, would it be better to actually reconnect with someone cool right now? Would it be better to put in a little bit of that initial energy to step into the conversation, to touch base with someone? And would that recharge me better? It's not the intuitive thing in that moment, not at all. But it is something that very often does change a lot. Okay, and the last final one is, to use the dreams and exciting plans of the future as the fuel to pull us forward and drive us within these little bit darker times. And how does that look like? It looks like by basically asking yourself some nice questions that lead you to daydream more. Maybe, which trip should I plan for this year? Or maybe, what is my bucket list? And writing down all the things you want to do within your life that would excite you and feel like an adventure. And then from there, maybe picking a couple that you actually want to do this year, putting them somewhere in the calendar, even if it's not this week, but sometimes in this year. Starting to plan them a little bit, connecting with friends with whom you want to plan a trip or an adventure. Putting these kind of plans and dreams in your mind more and also in your calendar so you know something is coming and something nice is happening will very often serve as that vision of, better days coming. And then you can use the dark winter days to actually work on those plans. It's not pity to spend a dark, cold evening in, or, exploring destinations, which in summer would be a little bit pity to spend the time at laptop looking for trips and ideas. So it's really good idea to use that time now to push ourselves into a bit more dreamy mode and think, hey, what would pull me forward and excite me if I started planning it now, even if it's happening later. Speaking of which, one really exciting plan you might want to join is the Getaway at Happiness Academy this year. Getaway is 1 week long immersive learning event in which we meet in a group of around 10, 12 people, usually quite amazing people from all over Europe for now, but the world potentially as well. And there we spend some of the time learning different positive psychology tools, having deep, meaningful conversations, and exploring all these similar set of topics like in these podcasts. And other part of the time we spend in adventures and exploring the place where we are, enjoying some great food and good company. So if that sounds appealing, that might be a plan you put in your calendar for the autumn. I'll also add the link in the description so you can check it out and already get in touch about it. We're planning it already. Now, apart from that, if you feel like your life has been lacking a bit more of these exciting plans and you feel like, oh, but I don't know what I want, I don't know where I'm going, then you know where you need to join me. You need to join me on Life Design. Life Design is a 3-hour online workshop on which I push you a little bit into that dreamy mode, and create that space for you to build clarity and motivation about your life plans and life dreams. And you leave the call with one clear page that says it all, that gives you all the answers that you need in that moment. So if you feel like, I need to sort out a little bit my plans, do join me there. I will also link it in the podcast description. Now, I hope these tips have been useful and that you will put them in practice. Very quick reminder, and while I'm reminding you, please choose one to already act on. First one was move more and get outside even if it's cold. Second tip against winter blues is to balance well between also allowing yourself rest, but then also pushing yourself to move, right? So to give yourselves both and try to assess as well as you can, not go by default, but try to assess intentionally which is the right balance for you right now. The third one was building positive emotions by intentionally putting small things, small actions, small ideas all over your day. And then the fourth one was reconnecting with others, even when we feel like pulling in, to still be a bit proactive about connecting with people who we know lift us up. And the fifth one, the last one, was to get in the dreamer mode and start making some dreams and plans for better days ahead that will kind of pull you out of this winter gloom and dark days. I hope this was helpful. I'm looking forward to the next topic coming up, and I'm always very open to your suggestions and ideas of what other podcast episodes should be about. So if you're dealing with any challenges or you have any question related to well-being, resilience, engagement in life, motivation, making life plans, do let me know. You can always comment under the podcast or the YouTube. You can also reach out through Happiness Academy Instagram account, or the best way, if you're on Happiness Academy newsletter, is to hit reply, and then that reply hits my inbox directly. If you're not on Happiness Academy newsletter, do join us. It goes out every week and contains many different tools, ideas, tips from positive psychology. You can also find it in the podcast description. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you like Happiness Academy podcast, do leave us a rating and a review. It will be really helpful. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode description to discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at the Happiness Academy newsletter.